Hi there, everyone. Let's talk coffee. Coffee is one of those amazing beverages that has been demonized over time. And there's really two sides of the bean. You know, there's the good, the bad, and the ugly. And as with just about everything else that we consume, it's important to understand what makes where the issues come from when we talk about coffee and where the positives come from. And so, you know, over time, coffee has been given a bad name. A lot of people have been told you have to stop drinking coffee. It's not good for you, et cetera, et cetera. But just like every other plant on the universe, there are positive sides to coffee beans as well. And so first, I just kind of want to talk about where a lot of the negative aspects come from when we're talking about coffee, and really that has more to do with commercialized coffee and the processing of that coffee and the way it's grown. So coffee is a very heavily chemicalized crop. So there's a lot of herbicide and pesticide that is used in commercialized coffees. And often, too, they are blends of multiple different sources and origins. So these coffees are grown all over the world. Beans come in, they sit, they get moldy. Sometimes they have heavy metals in them that are not tested for, other types of toxicities, herbicides and pesticides. And all these beans are just thrown together in a big pile, and then they're dished out into different bags and sent off into the commercialized market. And you can understand that if you had two different apples, right? If you had an apple that was growing wild, that was organic and wild, that might be a healthier version than the one that was just sprayed with Monsanto herbicide and pesticide, right? And so that's basically the same thing we're talking about here. So when you're talking about coffee and having a healthy source of coffee, what you need to be looking for is an organic source. If not organic, definitely non-GMO, but organic is best. Chemical-free, lab tested to be chemical-free, because the heavy metals and the mycotoxins or mold toxins, along with herbicides and pesticides, can be very, very damaging to people and can cause chronic inflammation and all types of symptomatology for people. So you want to make sure that your coffee is being lab tested. Ideally, it's shade grown, and ideally, it's single origin. So these are the kinds of things I'm looking for when I'm looking for a coffee bean. Traditionally, and especially with autoimmune disease patients have been told often to stop drinking coffee. There is a diet called the autoimmune protocol diet, and it is often used as a tool to decrease inflammation in people who are struggling with their autoimmune symptoms. So in an acute flare, using the autoimmune protocol diet to reduce inflammation is a common occurrence in functional or integrative medicine as a way of addressing some of those symptoms for autoimmune disease patients. And one of the things that they're told to avoid is coffee, and the reason for that is because the diet calls for you to avoid all seeds, because seeds can be inflammatory simply because they're hard to break down, and many seeds have lectins in them that cause inflammation. Now, if you sprout your seeds or you cook them appropriately to get rid of those lectins, now they're not quite so inflammatory. So again, you kind of have to look at the whole story and the whole picture. So when we're talking about autoimmunity, the reason the autoimmune protocol diet, the reason coffee is told to people to be removed is because it's a seed. It has nothing to do with the caffeine content, and it's just because of the seed. However, really the inflammatory pieces that have been proven, the inflammatory causes of coffee that have been proven have more to do with the processing, the mycotoxins, the herbicides, the pesticides, the heavy metals, and those types of things that are causing inflammation. So if you can source it from an organic, non-GMO, single origin, shade grown, lab tested, and proven to not have those toxins in it, if you can find that kind of a source, you're going to have a low inflammatory coffee bean that is most likely delicious and actually can improve your immune system. So there's quite a bit of research now that's come out in the last few years showing that coffee actually can reduce inflammatory cytokines, that it can that it can actually increase natural killer cell action, that it can decrease TH1 and TH2, which are related to TH1 and TH2 actually mellow out the damage that's done by the cytokines. So it's actually a protective. So by improving those numbers, it actually is protective against those cytokines. So there's actually an argument that for some people, coffee can actually improve your autoimmune symptoms, which is interesting. But for others, it can make it worse. And so when you have autoimmune disease or you have an inflammatory state, you kind of have to find out for yourself how your body is going to react. So some of the reasons why it can make autoimmunity worse is because the caffeine content, so not really the coffee bean, but the caffeine content. Caffeine can increase cortisol and adrenal stress, which increases blood glucose, which increases insulin sensitivity, increases insulin resistance, can contribute to weight gain and diabetes and inflammation because of the impact of cortisol on the sugar pathways. And so that's really where, for some people, coffee, the caffeine, can cause inflammatory response and worsening of autoimmunity. But that's caffeine. So that means it's not really the coffee bean, it's the caffeine. And caffeine can be found in a lot of places, not just coffee. So keeping that in mind too, when we're talking about inflammation, green tea has caffeine, black tea has caffeine. There's all kinds of things that have caffeine in them. Energy drinks, there's all sorts of things on the market, as you well know. So really the literature points more at the caffeine than the bean itself. So it's just all very interesting. And really cool is that now one of the new fads in coffee is actually fermented coffee. And there actually have some companies have created a fermented coffee that is essentially a stable probiotic blend of Java. So that's kind of cool too. I have not tried that myself, but it is on my to-do list. And I will be trying that sometime soon. So just kind of like with everything else, doing something every day is not good for you. Doing the same thing, even if it's a healthy thing, is not good for you. Having some variety, so I would say to you, have a cup of Joe every once in a while and enjoy that. Maybe don't do it every single day. And that's kind of the answer with most things, right? That's the answer with a glass of wine. That's the answer with foods that you eat. That's the answer with spinach and kale and any vegetable that you can name. If you eat the exact same foods every day, that's not good for your microbiome, for your gut health. Your gut health needs variety. That's the spice of life, right? Variety. So there's a lot of redeeming qualities in coffees if you're choosing a healthy brand. Now, I have favorites. I have two companies that I really love. One of them, and I'll be completely honest with you, one of them, I love all the flavors. I just love this company. And I'm going to share in the comments below the company link, and I believe you'll even get a discount using the link that I'm going to share on your initial order. And then there's another company that's actually grown for its polyphenols. So one of the most interesting things about the coffee bean, when it's grown and processed well and lab tested, is that it is one of the 5 highest antioxidant foods or things that we consume. So it is really high in polyphenols and alkaloids and other things that are antioxidant. And because of that, can be anti-inflammatory for us, can improve our inflammatory state and be very healthy contribution to our health and our wellness. So that's kind of amazing, right? That's pretty cool. Because of these antioxidants, it reduces our oxidative stress, our reactive oxygen species that are floating around causing us to have issues. And again, the issue with caffeine is that it can increase heart rate, it can affect your stress hormone response and impact blood sugar because of that. So for short-term periods, if you're not having caffeine every day of your life, but one day you use it, it will increase your brain focus, it increases circulation, it will, it can improve your energy for the day, it can improve your fat metabolism for the day. But the problem with caffeine is if you drink it every single day, your body becomes dependent upon it, and that's not healthy for you either. And caffeine withdrawal can be very uncomfortable, especially for those who are genetically susceptible to caffeine sensitivity. So there are genetics that play in to being more sensitive to caffeine. Those are the kinds of people who absolutely should not ever have a caffeinated beverage after 10 a.m. if they want to sleep that night. And we all know how important sleep is. Sleep, we need to have, at least as adults, at least 7 to 8 hours of sleep every night, because that is the time when our memories are cemented in our brain, where we clean our brain and drain the cellular debris and the byproducts of metabolism. That's when we clean our brain. That's when we recover our muscles. That's when our whole body cleans itself and recovers. So it is an incredibly important part of our brain health and our body health to have good sleep. So if you are one of those people who's genetically susceptible to and incredibly caffeine sensitive, you have to be very careful with using caffeine. And I would say to those people, you probably want to stick with a decaffeinated coffee. But then that brings up a whole nother problem in the processing piece. And the current research is kind of all over the board. For many years, we were, what I read in the research was, don't drink decaffeinated coffee because the process of decaffeinated the coffee was actually a dangerous process. They often would use solvents, high pressure CO2. They used, what is the name of it? Dichloromethane or methylene chloride or ethyl acetate, other types of solvents to remove the caffeine out of the bean. These solvents, it was thought these solvents would be left behind and that they were toxic to the body. Some of the more recent research that's come out and comments in the research has been, well, most of those solvents probably burn off. But I will tell you something, if I can use the Swiss water method, where it's only water, clean water that's being used to decaffeinate my coffee beans, versus a solvent that may or may not still be in my cup of joe when I'm drinking it, I can tell you right now, I will absolutely never drink a cup of decaffeinated coffee that is not created by the Swiss water method. It's just a safer method. There's several methods of decaffeinating the bean before roasting it. It has to be done before it's roasted. And it can be a complicated process. But definitely you don't want solvents in your cup of joe, right? So if you are drinking decaffeinated, and that's what I typically will do. I love my cup of coffee in the morning. I don't drink it every single day, but I do have it 2 or 3 times a week. And most of the time I drink a decaffeinated cup. Every once in a while I'll have a half calf if maybe I'm extra tired or I have a big day, a lot on my plate, and I want a little extra energy and focus, then I will use caffeine to my advantage. But then the next day I will be decaffeinated again. So you can kind of see how when you understand the crop, when you understand the processing, the harvesting, the processing, and what that means for the end product and what that means for your body, you can start to make decisions about coffee that will serve you better. So if you have autoimmune thyroid disease, you are probably one of the people I would say should avoid caffeine in pretty much any form, because it can increase your heart rate and it can impact cortisol, which feeds back into your thyroid disease. So caffeine in general for someone with autoimmune thyroid, I would really avoid that until you get all of your autoantibodies completely normalized and all of your hormones completely normalized off medications, not on thyroid medicines, but off of them. I would say you completely avoid caffeine. And if you do have it, you have it in very small amounts and very rarely. Now, green tea is a beautiful beverage as well, with lots of bioflavonoids and lots of redeeming qualities, as has been all over the literature, so you're probably aware. So I hate to tell someone who has autoimmune thyroid to never have a cup of green tea, but I would say, to just be careful about the amount of caffeine, because, as I say, it can really impact the thyroid hormone function. But other than that, if you're an autoimmune disease patient, you just need to play with it and see. If you feel more inflamed and you don't feel good after you've had a cup of coffee for the day, either that day, the next day, or for a couple of days after, then that's something that you should just avoid until you can get your autoimmune disease, the root cause, a little bit better handled. If, on the other hand, you actually feel great with it, you may be one of those people who actually it improves your cytokine, your inflammatory cytokine, and your inflammatory response, and actually can improve your autoimmunity. There's a beautiful study, and most of you guys know that I have inflammatory bowel disease. There's a beautiful study, research proven, that coffee can actually improve gut health, especially in those with ulcerative colitis. It's a really nice study that came out. And again, I would say not every ulcerative colitis patient should be drinking coffee. That it's not like I would use that as a therapy. And it probably won't affect every single person the same way. However, it is interesting to know that it can improve gut health in some people. And again, this fermented coffee really has piqued my interest. I really want to try this, and it's basically a fermented coffee that has a built-in probiotic because it's fermented, right? Fermented, whatever it is, fermented milk is yogurt, and yogurt or kefir, or there's nattokinase, which is, I believe, fermented soybeans, and then there's all kinds of fermented things. Kombucha is one of my favorite fermented beverages. I don't drink it very often because it's often loaded with sugar, but sometimes you can find one that has a very low sugar content, and it's delicious. So anything when you're eating sauerkraut, fermented things have probiotics built in. That's how they are fermented. And so you're basically eating food that adds to your microbiome in a positive way. So the idea of having a fermented coffee kind of excites me. I haven't tried it yet, so I don't know. I can't give you a good review on that. But the two companies that I really love, one is called Life Boost, and if I'm honest, that's the one I order from the most. I really love their flavors. I really love the coffee. I love the personality of the company. And to me, the personality of the company is almost as important as the product itself. They do a beautiful job with their lab testing. All of their coffees are tested for over 400 chemicals to make sure that they're not there, including heavy metals, mold, toxins, herbicides, and pesticides. So they do a wonderful job, and their flavors are phenomenal. They are also very low acid coffee. So Life Boost does a nice job with a low acid coffee. And I'm going to put a link in the comments below so that you will get a discount when you order. And I might get a little perk from the company too if enough of you order. So I might get a free bag here or there. It won't change your cost, but it might give me a little gift. So use my link if you don't mind. And if you do, that's fine too. Go do your thing. The other company that is really a beautiful coffee company is called Purity Coffee. And they grow their beans for their polyphenol content, and they're touted to have one of the highest polyphenol contents in coffees. So the polyphenols are what makes it so highly antioxidant and what helps it to reduce the inflammatory cytokine storm, if you will, reducing the inflammation. And so that's another brand that is really well touted as being a beautiful coffee brand. So that's my story. I'm trying to think if there was anything else I wanted to tell you about coffee. I made a comment in a podcast about a month ago, and I have had so many people reach out to me. Hey, which coffee is it that you like? What was the story about the coffee? So I just wanted to come on here live and really just answer all of the coffee questions that were lingering out there for everyone. Again, I'll put my links in the comments below so you guys can go and order and try it and get a little discount when you do. These are two companies that I like. It doesn't mean they're the only companies. So if you want to go looking around, I've given you a lot of information in this video to help you to find a quality company, to know what you're looking for when you're looking for a quality bean. I personally love my whole beans, and I grind them at the time that I make my coffee. I love a good French press, but I also have a Keurig. So I do it both ways depending on my day and how fast I need my coffee. And again, I don't drink it every day. But I do really enjoy a cup of Joe. So coffee's back in as far as I'm concerned. It is not out, it's in. All right, you guys, enjoy your day and enjoy your Joe.